Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. We're doing Genesis chapter 37 and 38. Fortunately, I don't need to push much commentary on Genesis chapter 38. I've already kind of done it. But we'll go over anything unusual and we'll take things as they go. But no matter what, let's jump right into the text on Genesis chapter 37. Now Jacob was settled into the land where his father had sojourned, the land of Canaan. This then is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended the flocks with his brothers, as helper to the sons of his father's wives Bilhah and Zilpah. And Joseph brought back bad reports of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph best of all of his sons, for he was a child of his own old age, and he had made him an ornamented tunic. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated them so that they would not speak a friendly word to him. Once Joseph had a dream which he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream which I have dreamed. We were binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright. Then your sheaves gathered around and bowed low to his sheaf." His brothers answered, "Do you mean to reign over us? Do you mean to rule over us?" And they hated him even more for his talk about his dreams. He dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing to me." And when he told it to his father and brothers, his father berated him. "What," he said to them, "is this dream you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow low to you on the ground?" So his brothers were wrought up at him, and his father kept the matter in mind. One time, when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing at Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "I am ready." And he said to him, "Go and see how your brothers are and how the flocks are faring, and bring me back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" And he answered, "I am looking for my brothers. Could you tell me where they are pasturing?" The man said, "They have gone from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dothan. Sorry, dropped the book. They saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say, 'A savage beast devoured him.' We shall see what comes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben went on, "Shed no blood. Cast him into that pit of the wilderness, but do not touch him yourselves," intending to save him from them and restore him to his father. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, that ornamented tunic that he was wearing, and took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to a meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels bringing gum, balm, and ladanum to be taken to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let us not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. When the Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who brought Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he rent his clothes. Returning to his brothers, he said, "The boy is gone. What am I to do?" They then took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a kid, and dipped the tunic in the blood. They had the ornamented tunic taken to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it. Is it your son's tunic or not?" He recognized it and said, My son's tunic, a savage beast devoured him. Joseph was torn by a beast. Jacob rent his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and observed mourning for his son many days. All his sons sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, saying, No, I will go down mourning my son to Sheol. Thus his father bewailed him. The Midianites, meanwhile, sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward. We get a lot of flashing back between Jacob and Israel. That's the most noticeable thing about this chapter. Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite, was his firstborn child from Rebekah. And Rebekah died in childbirth with their second child. Now we know Jacob/Israel was not terribly old when he went out to seek his fame and fortune with his uncle Laban. So how is this the child of his old age? Well, Jacob doesn't necessarily mean it's his twilight years, but rather one of his final children. He has lots of kids, and it took quite a while. As a matter of fact, one wife and 2 concubines before his wife gave him any children. His second wife gave him any children. So we can interpret that metaphorically, not truly the son of his old age, but after having waited a long time. Joseph is a bit of a tattletale. I mean, the first thing he does is reports on his brothers, and he can't keep his mouth shut about his dreams. Even Israel gives him warning saying, shut up about your dreams, kid, they're pissing people off. But then, one of the weirdest things in the Bible takes place. Actually, a lot of segments have to break just the right way for this chain of events to happen. So, despite the fact that Jacob/Israel, I still prefer to refer to them as a plural, even though they're one person, knowing that his son is not liked by his brothers, and knowing that his dreams are pissing off his brothers, son's about to check on them. Because you know what? He likes finding out the dirt on his sons. So he's using Joseph as his little spy. That's going to come back to haunt him. We have his brothers plotting against him. But Reuben decides outright that he's going to save his life. So he says, don't kill him. After all, Reuben is the one that just a chapter ago was betraying his father. Now, is this some sort of guilt expiation? Is he feeling responsible? Or is he trying to recover favor with his father in some way, shape, or form? Jacob/Israel seems to know Reuben laid with his concubine. And yeah, I think Reuben is really trying to cover himself. We get this whole Judah incident, and Judah is saying to his brothers, hey, it doesn't help us to kill our brother. That's kind of a sin that we know from our ancestors. Killing your brother, Cain and Abel, results in no good. So why don't we sell him? Now we know at this point, Reuben has gone away. Judah looks like a jerk in this particular context. But I'm going to submit to you, Judah was actually trying to keep Joseph alive. And the only way he didn't know Reuben had his own plan. He's looking around at his brothers who are like, yeah, let's kill him and do it. And he's like, I got to do something. Hey, let's sell him as a slave. You can always recover a slave. That's an option for the future. So he works the deal and figures, okay, later on I'll do something. And that way, Jacob is at least still alive. Something's going to happen. And this ultimately is how Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, well, at least the Joseph part of that combination, wind up in the land of Egypt. We're going to get back to them in a second, because we're going to cover one of my favorite parts of the Bible. Because this shows that Judah is a man of his word, and even when he's confused, he will always try to do what's right. Let's focus on the character of Judah, not the others, because we covered them already. Judah's trying to do the right thing. because after all, Judah becomes the nation of Judah and the nation of Jews. So at least they're trying to do the right thing. Chapter 38. About that time, Judah left his brothers and camped near a certain Abdullamite whose name was Hirah. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he married her and cohabited with her. She conceived and bore him a son, and he named him Er. She conceived again and bore a son, and named him Onan. Once again she bore a son, and named him Shelah. He was at Chezib when she bore him. Judah got a wife for Er his firstborn. But Er's, Judah's firstborn, was displeasing to the Lord, and the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, "Join with your brother's wife, and do your duty by your brother-in-law, and provide offspring for your brother." But Onan, knowing that the seed would not count as his, let it go to waste whenever he joined with his brother's wife, so as not to provide offspring for his brother. What he did was displeasing to the Lord, and he took his life also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Stay as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he thought he too might die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live at her father's house. A long time after, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. When his period of mourning was over, Judah went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, together with his friend Hirah the Abdullamite. And Tamar was told, "Your father is coming up to Timnah for the sheep shearing." So she took off her widow's garb, covered her face with a veil, and wrapping herself up, sat at the entrance of Enaim, which is the road to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he took her for a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here, let me sleep with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. "What," she asked, "will you pay for sleeping with me?" He replied, "I will send a kid from my flock." But she said, "You must leave a pledge until you have sent it." And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your seal and cord, and the staff which you carry." So he gave them to her, and slept with her, and she conceived by him. Then he went on her way. She took off her veil, and again put on her widow's garb. Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Abdullamite, to redeem the pledge from the woman, but he could not find her. He inquired of the people of that town, "Where is the cult prostitute, the one that Enaim by the road?" But they said, "There has been no prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I could not find her. Moreover, the townspeople said, 'There has been no prostitute here.'" Judah said, "Let her keep them, lest we become a laughingstock. I did send her this kid, but you did not find them." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot. In fact, she is with child by harlotry." "Bring her out," said Judah, "and let her be burned." As she was brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law, "I am with child by the man to whom with these belong." And she examined these. "Whose seal and cord and staff are these?" Judah recognized them and said, "She is more in the right than I am, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he was not intimate with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. While she was in labor, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife tied a crimson hand on it to signify this one came out first. But then, when he drew back his hand, out came his brother, and she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." So he was named Perez. And afterwards his brother came out, on whose hand was the crimson head. He was named Zerah. So we got Judah, who suddenly felt the need to leave his brothers, presumably to go after Joseph. But Judah is not always the smartest of men. He's not dumb, but he has his moments. So he gets turned aside and winds up marrying a girl. Maybe he simply couldn't find Joseph because the people that he sold him to no longer had them. So what a twisted web we weave, etc., etc. Then we get into this whole mess about Onan, which has nothing to do about masturbation, but has everything to do about sinning before God. See, for some reason, the firstborn, was displeasing to God. It's possible that was because she's a Canaanite. And God as we will see, God has a history of just not liking any product of Israel mixing with the Canaanites. So perhaps that's the sin. God, for some reason, will forgive the second one, but the first one, he likes to cut him down. For more information, read my book, Secrets of Solomon. You're going to find out a lot more about that. And then Onan does what's distasteful and doesn't father any children for his brother's name to continue, and blammo, he's gone. The third kid, now keep in mind, Selah is grown up. He's at least 16 years old. This girl, who presuming she was in her mid-teens to late teens by the time she was being married, by now is in her late 20s, early 30s. It's becoming very difficult for her to get a man. So when she decides to play the harlot to her father-in-law, she is doing this really to protect herself. Even Judah mentions, I am the one who is in error because I didn't marry my son off to her. But he doesn't sleep with her again. He still recognizes there's that barrier between sleeping with his son's wife. So he is recognizing, again, Judah doesn't look very good in all this. It's not a good image, but he at least is endeavoring to do the best he can with the circumstances that he has been given. Remember, Judah is ultimately the one that gives birth to the modern kingdom of Israel as we know it, because 10 tribes wind up going missing. So Judah is the last one standing, Judah and his offspring. For now, this is Joseph's time to shine. We're going to get into that very soon. So, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget, we have merchandise available, books specifically. If you enjoy wisdom, books are always the best gift possible, and the link to them will be in the description. No matter what happens, you can always get a hold of us on Twitter at Silverlight Live. We do appreciate comments on the videos and on Twitter. There's other ways to get a hold of us, but that should suffice for now. And we hope you have a fantastic day.